Hello everyone, my name is Jack Fisher and welcome to my world. And today I'd like you to join me in another thought experiment. I see these experiments as both a mental exercise and a test of imagination. I think it's important to work our minds as much as our bodies. I know that's easier for some people more than others, and in my experience, a healthy consumption of superhero media goes a long way towards fostering more imagination. And wouldn't you know it, this particular thought experiment involves superheroes. Specifically, it involves scrutinizing the efforts of our favorite superheroes through a critical lens. Now by that, I don't mean outright deconstruction. Leave that sort of thing to the Alan Moores of the world. Now I also acknowledge it's popular these days to see superheroes in a cynical light. The success of The Boys is proof of that. To some, the mere existence of superhero media is just some childish wish fulfillment that only detracts actual people from doing actual things to help the actual world. Now, full disclosure, I don't buy that for a nanosecond. Call me an optimist, call me just a shameless fan of all things superheroes. But I honestly think the superhero genre as a whole reflects our best ideals as people. That's because superheroes literally personify the values that we hold dear. Beyond the story and intent behind them, they inspire us to contemplate just how great we can be. But the pursuit of greater ideals often requires a greater perspective. And that's the primary intent of this thought experiment. And it all comes back to one simple question. What makes a superhero effective in their heroic efforts? Now, there are bound to be many different answers to this question. Not every hero has the same capabilities, and every hero is motivated by different things, be it duty, honor, or avenging a dead loved one. Varied or not, they're all driven to become heroes in their own right. But in the context of achieving what they set out to do, just how effective are they? Now, that's a difficult question to answer, and you can't just rely on what the comics, cartoons, or movies depict. And in some respects, the narrative structure of those mediums makes it impossible to judge a hero's effectiveness. That's because that, due to the nature of the medium, heroes can never succeed beyond a certain point. If they did, the story would be over, and there would be no more money for their corporate owners. And we can't have that now, can we? But I digress. For this mental exercise, I encourage everyone to look beyond the ideals, the corporate incentives, and focus only on the results. That way, we can seriously contemplate the approach of your favorite heroes. For what they do, why they do it, and how they go about getting it done, just how effective are they? How does a hero even go about being effective in the broadest sense of the word? Should they kill the villains they face? Should they work within the law or outside it? Should they operate out in the open or in the shadows? Should they engage the public to any extent? And if so, how much? Regardless of their approach, we should also make an effort to measure just how effective a superhero can be, because that's a relevant issue for any hero intent on achieving their heroic goals. The answers vary from person to person and from character to character. Like I said before, not every hero goes about being a hero in the same way. As such, Superman's methods are very different from the Punisher. As a result, their effectiveness will manifest in many different ways. With that in mind, let's look at a few examples. Take Superman, for instance. He's one of the most iconic heroes of all time. And you could make the case that he's quite effective. He's motivated to do the right thing, inspire good in others, and just help people. Now granted, he has some very strict lines that he won't cross. Every time he doesn't kill Lex Luthor means giving him another opportunity to do something awful. But again, just stopping Lex Luthor and people like him isn't Superman's primary goal. His main goal comes back to inspiring others to do good. And in most mediums, we see him succeeding. Batman is another example, but one that's a bit trickier to assess. His motivations are very different. He seeks to stop criminals and punish those who prey on the vulnerable. On the surface, he succeeds. He stops a great many criminals throughout Gotham. But you could also argue that he creates other crimes along the way. The more his efforts escalate, the more his enemies adapt, becoming bigger, bolder, and more dangerous in the process. On top of that, being a very rich person who fights crime rather than use his wealth to address the causes of said crime, well, that makes his motivations somewhat questionable. Now, on the other side of that coin, you could also argue that Batman is effective in one critical way. He really scares people. Specifically, he evokes a great deal of fear in the criminal underworld. You could make the case that because of this fear, many people who might have otherwise attempted a life of crime decided not to. The prospect of facing Batman is just too scary. As a result, the only ones who become criminals are the kind who are really truly deranged, the Jokers, the Penguins, the Killer Crocs of the world. And in that context, it kind of makes sense as to why Batman has such a colorful rogues gallery to begin with. And then there's Spider-Man. Now this is where the thought experiment gets a little bit harder to contemplate and is sure to spark plenty of disagreement, especially among Spider-Man fans. Now Spider-Man's motivations are very similar to Batman's, but his approach is very different. Spider-Man does what he does out of a sense of responsibility and guilt over not saving his uncle. Now that's a powerful motivator, no question. But his methods are somewhat curious for someone with a genius IQ. Whereas Batman tends to work closely with the police, Spider-Man always just does his own thing. And in lieu of detective work, he just webs up criminals for the police to arrest. And unlike other characters like Daredevil, he plays no part in actually putting them through the justice system. So it's understandable that many just end up back on the streets and with an angry grudge. With respect to facing really dangerous supervillains like Norman Osborn, Spider-Man has lines he won't cross like Superman and Batman. He'll both subdue those villains and rarely cause them serious injury. But he also leaves those same villains for others to handle. And, not surprisingly, those villains often return stronger and angrier than before. Now, it doesn't just come back to Spider-Man refusing to kill, but in terms of being an effective hero, his results are somewhat limited. On top of that, his approach is somewhat inconsistent. Spider-Man tries to inspire others to be responsible, like Superman, but he's rarely seen in the same idealistic light. Now, some of that is because of J. Jonah Jameson, but some of that is also on Spidey too. Unlike Batman, he just doesn't scare criminals nearly as much. Plus, he has a more colorful and flashy personality. While that makes him non-threatening to the general public, it also makes himself a big, colorful target. And even though he's a target that's hard to hit, he's still a target. And bad guys and villains at all levels love going after an easy target. Now, none of this is to say that Spider-Man is a bad hero or an ineffective one. He's still a great character, and I love him as much as any longtime Marvel fan. But if you really take the time to scrutinize his approach to heroism, you find plenty of shortcomings, especially when compared to similar heroes. And those shortcomings are critical in terms of seeing the bigger picture surrounding superheroes in general. Maybe Spider-Man is still effective in his own unique way, and that way may not line up with the bigger picture, but it doesn't have to if it still achieves his personal goals. But if it's only about achieving personal goals, then is that really heroic to begin with? Again, it depends. There's no right or wrong answer, but it is interesting to contemplate. So, what do you think? What makes a superhero effective at what they do? And by those standards, would you say your favorite characters are effective? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, everyone, and thanks for joining me in my world. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, take care and stay safe.